A pleasant good morning to everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Dr. Meena Rambukas, Deputy Dean for Planning and Programming in the Faculty of Social Sciences. I want to say a special welcome to members of the campus executive team, deans and deputy deans, our wider campus community, members of the media, business community, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. On behalf of the Business Development Unit, I want to express thanks to you for joining our breakfast meeting with CEOs on building mental resilience, a COVID-19 response. The Business Development Unit is part of the Faculty of Social Sciences and provides professional training, seminars, and workshops to the business community. Over the past 12 months, the Business Development Unit hosted a series of virtual seminars which specifically focus on responding to the turmoil and disruptions of the COVID-19 pandemic. In 2 weeks, the Business Development Unit will be hosting another seminar on strategies and tactics to build mental resilience. And you will be hearing more about this upcoming seminar during today's session. So it is without delay, I will hand you over to our Business Development Coordinator, Ms. Lisa McDonald, who will introduce our moderator and speakers. Thank you very much. Lisa?
Thank you, and a warm good morning to all. In this dynamic environment, we need to apologize firstly for Dion Abdul not being able to join us this morning. Without further ado, I will commence by introducing our moderator, Shian Otley Reed. Shian is a qualified industrial and organizational psychologist who is a chief executive officer of a leading consulting company. She has over 15 years of experience working to influence change within organizations. She has worked both the private and public sectors, dealing with various human capital challenges. Her passion, professional focus, and expertise are in the areas of executive coaching, team building and communication, leadership development, strategic planning and visioning, critical thinking, and problem solving. Included in our panel of speakers are Andrea Taylor Hanna. She is the campus bursar at the University of the West Indies in the Augustine campus. She's a fellow of the Chartered Association of Certified Accountants of England and Wales and chair of ESHE's Learning Center Board of Management. She has 35 years of experience in finance and investment management. Andrea has a passion for educating others on budgeting and saving. Priya Narayan Singh. Priya has worked with Ernst & Young for over 28 years. She sits on the board of Ernst & Young Caribbean, is the country managing partner of the Trinidad office, and serves in the assurance practice. She has predominantly served large domestic, regional, and international clients in the financial services industry and other major conglomerates. She leads the financial services industry's practice area for Ernst & Young Caribbean. Gretchen Camacho Mohammed. Gretchen joined RBT Bank Limited in 1995 and has held senior roles in sales and service, personal banking, operations, group risk management, and business banking. In these roles, she executed strategic initiatives to drive strong sales and service performance, high employee engagement, and promote a differentiated client experience. She was appointed Managing Director of the Trinidad and Tobago Bank in 2018. Dr. Daryl Dindial, Commander Retired, is the Chief Personnel Officer of Personal Development of the Government of Trinidad and Tobago since December 2019. He is the Principal Advisor of the state on terms and conditions of employment for the public service and the Trinidad and Tobago Defense Force. Some of the current projects he is supporting include aspects of public service transformation, such as revised employee performance management systems and the conduct of job evaluation exercises. Thank you. And now I hand over to our moderator, Chian.
Thank you, Lisa. Morning, everyone. I hope this session is breakfast with us. So I'm hoping that somewhere out there are some homemade doubles or something exciting that people are having, because I'll confess I'm missing that. Okay, so we're going to start. And this COVID reality, when you sit down and think about where we are now, the first case of COVID was November 2019, thereabout, in China. And at that point in time, it seemed so far away. It was not something that was really on our radar. I mean, there were certain things that were happening in the background, but I think we in the Caribbean and in Trinidad in particular, we were kind of going along with life as normal. And then in December, there were then multiple cases in Wuhan, China. And I think people started to sit up and listen a little bit and say, well, something's going on. But still, it seemed a world away. Then March 12th, 2020, Trinidad has its first COVID-19 case. And it was at that point that I think all of our realities changed. And now we are a year plus later, and I don't think anyone has been left unscathed thus far. I mean, globally, locally, I think it's something that has impacted everyone. And so this whole concept of resilience and mental resilience coming out of this experience is one that we really want to talk about today. And we want to talk about people's realities with COVID, because each of our panelists will have different perspectives of what this journey has been like thus far. And so I would actually like to start with Andrea in terms of sharing your reality, COVID reality thus far with us.
Thank you, Shian. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone listening. In considering this question, I recognize that we tend to have COVID realities I have COVID realities on 3 different levels. The first level was, how do we respond to that immediate need that COVID caused? How do you look after staff? And how do you manage a transition from how you worked to working in an environment that was remotely? And I remember the 2 words came to my mind, were really present at the beginning. And that one was retreat, and the other one was reckless. And those were the behaviors that we were seeing with respect to how the Trinidad population was responding to this COVID threat. We were either, I want to run in my house, I want to close all the doors, I don't want to talk to anybody, leave me alone. Or there was this group that was reckless, that, COVID wasn't real and I needed to go out. And I remember consciously saying, we need a resilient response to COVID, recognizing that this thing wasn't going to go away in any time soon and it was going to be here for a while. So with respect to the staff, we were able to organize some education sessions to help them cope with this transition. And the education sessions had 3 planks. The first plank was understanding the disease. And because we're operating out of UE, we have access to the best virologist in the country, Dr. Carrington, who was able to come in and share the makeup of the disease, the understanding of the disease, so that the staff could have a educated position from which they were responding. The second plank of our education came from OSH. What were your requirements to keep yourself healthy and safe in terms of work and in terms of home? So we got the OSH team to come in and do a number of sessions on healthy responding. And the third thing that we did really early, and I'm glad that we did that really early, is that we brought our EAP team in to do what's mental resilience? How do you, what's your level of self-care that you're going to ensure that you're looking after during this season? And we had, and in fact, even back then, those were the sessions that the staff responded to the most and had the most questions. And you recognize, hey, self-care is going to be a big issue in this, even at the beginning and continuing all the way now, self-care has been a big issue. So those are the planks around which we operated and introduced change to the staff. And I'm hoping that they're still tapping into all of those things as we go through. Yeah,
Right.
so that's my staff plank.
Okay, anything else into, you said there were 3 areas in terms of your COVID reality.
The second area of my COVID reality is self. I am, COVID has brought to me a significant level of peace and calm, and that's strange because that's not where it started. I remember starting out those endless Zoom meetings, we all being zoomed out, trying to plan how to transition your institution into a space that was functional. And coming out of that first 6 weeks, I found the frenzy, the internal frenzy that was my life even before the COVID struck, and that certainly was your life during that 6 week period of that first initial introduction. That thing went away and a calm took over, a peace took over. Uh, and maybe it was all the EAP oversight as well, but a determination to walk through this and succeed, a resolve to come through this with a particular level of care, and a clarity on what was important and what is not important, and what you're going to take on and what you're not going to take on became very clear. And I think it is out of that that even now, I mean, everybody could be talking about black fungus and all the things that is in the news to scare the living daylights out of us. But I will resist it. I will not sit and soak up all of that. So that's my personal response. I'm really amazed that I've come out of this with a certain level of calm. The third response, though, is on a family level. Because all of my family members are healthcare providers, direct healthcare providers, the care of my young ones and their health is something that you carry with consciously. So as COVID has really now multiplied in the country, you find that your rules for how you enter our home and what you do as soon as you get through the door has intensified because you want to make sure that in their work environment they are safe, but they don't bring that work environment into the home. So some really strict protocols about behavior as you come through the door. And to the most recent of the conversations of, okay, what is a COVID kit that we need to put together and have in this house? That's because COVID is now coming so close and you know someone who has it and you know someone who has died. So the consciousness of it is changing. And now the conversation is around, what's that COVID kit that I need to keep prepared in my house that has the zinc and the Panadol and the gloves and all the things that, that they are saying that you may need to manage someone or to help manage your household if COVID does come close. So that's my kind of 3 levels of responses for COVID in this season.
That's a very functional response for sure. In that very, what do we need to do? And some of what you just spoke about speaks to mental resilience. I mean, the calm that comes after is part of the offlow of mental resilience. So we'll talk about that a little bit later. Priya, I wanted to ask if you had anything you wanted to add in terms of your COVID reality thus far in this journey.
Sure. So my COVID reality, I guess, if I take Andrea's framework, the different parts that, there's the EY component. So, you are with a team of other partners responsible for 270 people. You want to make sure that, their safety and their security is taken care of. And we were really fortunate in many ways because we were already geared to work remotely, because when we go out to work at clients, etc., all our, we're set up to do that. So we had some transitionary issues, but it's way less than many. So we're very fortunate like that. and we've been able to keep things up and running and help our clients, adjust to this environment, adjust how we provide our services, so that they are then meeting their tax requirements and audit requirements and all those kind of things, and help them through the other things that may be causing them anxiety, along with transitioning their businesses. So you'd certainly hear a lot about, everyone's digital agenda, and there's no question that has now a new speed and intensity that didn't exist before. It's transitioned from being a discussion to a reality, and people really trying to make sure that they have the agility in their businesses to go forward. So EY, keeping EY, our team, safe and sound, and helping our clients and making sure that, everyone can have a salary at the end of the month, and we had those issues, that was huge. It was a really big part of what we had to do, but we, as I said, we're more fortunate than many, and we do recognize that. On the personal side, there is a combination of factors. I think probably what I miss most is the freedom to hug my mom the way I would like to, so just the caution that comes with that, and those other aspects of it, those physical interactions that you would have with many. I every time, like, I look at an old Netflix or something on TV, and I see people without masks, and I see people hugging each other or eating in restaurants, it just looks strange. We've been so conditioned over the last year that I'm always kind of a little taken aback, and I'm like, okay, right, it's an older thing. This is not and it kind of like, in this, what is the future going to look like? But I mean, I have friends that have been impacted, many people. And I think it's just about, for me, I've always thought of myself as an empathetic person. And I think that personally, that's probably what's intensified for me to really, I do understand the components of that this has on people and the impact. And, it's just trying to be there and support friends, family, the country, our people as best as we can. But it's exhausting, and it's there's nobody that this hasn't impacted,
For sure. I mean, that's one of the things that makes this crisis a little different, because everyone is being impacted significantly.
Yeah.
I guess, Gretchen, is there anything in terms of your reality that you would like to share with us?
Yes, Shian, thank you, and morning to everybody. And like Priya and Andrea, I think initially last year, from an RBC or banking perspective, it was all about, and continues to be all about, the health and safety and wellness of our employees. And, we were very, very proactive, and continue to be very proactive with our employee communication, which is so key, to ensure that staff are kept up to date. We have things like an online site dedicated strictly to COVID. In there, you have resources, you have information, you have everything you need to go to help staff through this, both from a work perspective, but also from a mental perspective. So for us at RBC, it was firstly making sure that our employees and staff, the whole work from home, like Priya, we had already started a few years ago, moving staff to a work from home model. And so the reality of actually enhancing that, which we had to do because we had to insist on more people working from home, was not as hard as we thought it would be. Some hiccups, yes, but more or less staff were a little hesitant at first, but now when you do a survey, like, everybody wants to work from home. So we have to, we're a bank, we are client facing. So of course our client facing staff in branches have to be out there. So it's about maintaining that, the health and wellness, and making sure that our staff keep safe. Like, for example, last week we celebrated Mental Health Awareness Week. And so what we do is we continuously have things online or challenges for staff to keep them engaged and to keep the conversation going around how you're feeling, letting them know that, you know, we're here for them, giving them little activities to do, but also online courses for the educational piece and awareness to let them know, you know, sometimes if you're feeling overwhelmed, it's okay, you know, it's okay to not feel okay sometimes, you know, and it's okay not to be okay. And that message throughout so that people don't feel, oh my gosh, am I meeting the expectations of my leaders or my bosses or my clients? So we continue through that transition. And, you know, on a personal side, I would say, because my husband is a chef, and so he would have been impacted and his restaurants would have been impacted with COVID. What we found initially for me, because my hours are crazy, normally I would not come home until very late. He's at the restaurant, so we never had family time together. So what COVID brought was a lot of togetherness with our family. So we'd sit down and have a meal together, which was totally unheard of before COVID. I have two boys, one 10-year-old Josh and one 6-year-old Ross. And so, you know, it's around, you know, keeping them together, the challenges of online schooling, which, oh my God, last year was an absolute nightmare. I think now, you know, as we're a year into it, my oldest son, Josh, who's 10, he's now into the routine, but my 6-year-old, of course, is totally, I mean, I don't want to say give up, but I just leave him. And the teachers are so wonderful and patient. They are like, it's okay if he doesn't want to sit, let him do what he wants, run around, sit upside down, jump on the couch. It's okay, you know, and because you have that support, both from the teachers online and of course within our little family unit, it makes it so much easier mentally to cope, you know. So but it is hard, you know, it is hard, especially for my husband, who has, because he's not in a restaurant now, he has taken up a new passion of starting. He started a herb garden. Priya would know this, but now it's expanded to a full like vegetable and everything garden. So a year later, he can actually pick tomatoes from his garden, and we have that for dinner, right? So he's found a new passion, and it's about, you know, reinventing yourself too and finding ways to keep your mind alive and you happy. And so he loves his plants now, and that's his newfound passion together with food. So food and plants are his passion now.
Excellent. I mean, passion is definitely important for sure.
Yes.
Daryl, can you share with us a little bit of your reality, your COVID reality as well? And then I'm going to quickly ask you a follow-up question to it. So you have a kind of 1-2 punch.
Sure. So I will give a civil service perspective based on our experiences. When the first wave happened, we had to quickly try to determine the level of preparedness by ministries and departments to work remotely, and that's in the first wave, because there was a concern about how our ministries and departments are going to continue to provide an adequate level of public service delivery, while at the same time protecting the lives of those who work in those ministries and departments. So on the onset, we recognized immediately there were certain types of jobs that simply, it was not possible for them to work remotely. They include positions like maids and drivers, clerical staff, certain technical jobs. We had also quickly determined what were the priority areas in ministries and departments for people to be able to provide some level of service to the public. What we did was a survey right after the first wave, and we found some interesting results. Prior to COVID, at least 10% of staff across ministries and departments were already working remotely. So there was some level of ICT infrastructure to support that. We also recognized that there was a national ICT blueprint that was developed pre-COVID. But clearly, based on what has happened with COVID, a greater emphasis was put into addressing the many challenges across the public service to treat with the issues of the digitization goals. And by digitization, I just don't mean, for example, the digital record of files and correspondence, but rather the suite of services that stakeholders can access through an online medium. Another area that we recognized Shian, is when we looked at the ICT skills in the public service, one of the areas that we recognize is that the entry level for ICT positions in the public service, which is fixed term contracts, has a minimum level of at least 3 years experience. And when we surveyed to see what's happening with ICT people in the ministries and departments, there was a shortage of these individuals. We have over 50 academic institutions providing ICT training in Trinidad and Tobago. And that issue of having a high minimum training experience requirement is one of the issues we could adjust very quickly to allow people to come into the system, to develop their skills and competence to support the digitization trust that we have to treat with. So we recognize immediately that was an issue we had to treat with, and we expect that to be dealt with in a job evaluation exercise that we are currently working on that is expected to be completed within 15 months. Another issue we had to look at very closely as well was the EAP, and there's an EAP program in the public service. My view is that that program requires major room for improvement, especially at the non-clinical level. And the cabinet has agreed to support the strengthening of that particular EAP to allow permanent secretaries and ministries and departments to have officers be able to have the ability through building the capacity in those ministries to provide non-clinical level support. And I think if we do that at that juncture, it will probably prevent a lot of issues from reaching to the point where clinical support is required. At this point in time, I would share that we don't have a bird's eye view of the issues that affect public officers, either pre-COVID and post-COVID. And so that is a concern. And in strengthening the coordination of that EAP program, we are hopeful that we could be able to identify what are those issues that they are confronted with and develop the appropriate strategies to address them. In treating with the first wave, the state had also considered issues, really facilities rather, to treat with the protection of terms and conditions for public officers. So in the first wave, there was the pandemic leave that was approved by the cabinet, and terms and conditions were not affected. The cabinet also went further, and this was not a recommendation by the CPO, but the cabinet agreed, well, really recommended the issue of something called special sick leave, which is a special type of sick leave to treat with anybody who has contracted the virus. And it really prevents the usage of their normal sick leave eligibility. So public officers still have that facility. And based on our research, there's no country in the world that provides that additional entitlement for persons who might be affected by the virus. And lastly, I would like to say that we recognize as well, because of the policy position of the state, to ensure that civil servants, persons in the public service, and by extension the public sector, continue to receive their salary on a monthly basis. That is one of the factors that we recognize would have minimized the potential impact of public officers in this pandemic. And so we are grateful for that. And notwithstanding, we also recognize that there's an expectation by the state, all of our stakeholders, that public officers, while on this particular lockdown, continue to provide a level of service so our stakeholders, our clients can receive a reasonable level of public service delivery as they go about in the day-to-day business. So we have to treat with balancing, one, the realities of what the virus presented in terms of risk, and at the same time look very closely to see how the public service could quickly respond to ensure that we have a satisfactory level of service for stakeholders to access those critical services. And at the same time, look to see where there's opportunity in crisis to be able to drive some of the reform processes that are absolutely critical to public service reform that will help the entire country in terms of the delivery of services, whether it is for ordinary citizens, investors, or visitors.
So, I'm hearing you speak about some of the successes relative to the digitization and ICT and speeding things up, moving things along. Are there any other key successes that you think you could identify in terms of the public sector reality or key learnings even?
I think, Shian, what we have learned is that we need to be agile. We have many concerns about the public sector is moving too slow to treat with delivery of services. And there are constant changes in the policy decisions being made. And the ability to be agile and to develop the capability to do so is something that we have recognized there's a need to do. develop that level of competence to think very quickly and make decisions, and at the same time be able to roll out initiatives, policy directions on behalf of the state for all our stakeholders to benefit from. So clearly there's a lot of room for work in terms of improving the ability of the public service to be agile, but that's a critical issue that we have to pay particular attention to.
Okay. Priya, I wanted to ask you, from the private sector and some of the, I guess, clients that you interface with, as well as EY, are there any key successes in terms of this COVID journey?
There are many, you know, I mean, in terms of, as I said, I mentioned it like in my opening comments around, you know, the whole digital agenda.
Right.
And people kind of accelerating that digital agenda, you know, to make sure that they could continue to operate. That's there for sure. You know, what people would see is that, you know, their revenue lines and their top lines are impacted. So how companies are also responding. And when we talk about the digital agenda, it's, you know, what do you need to do to sell your product or do whatever at that digitally. But then there's also in your processing and your back office, how can you be more efficient around those things to save costs, etc. So that if you can, you know, if you can do that and save your costs, and even if your revenue is shrinking, you kind of protect your profitability, your employee base, etc. So there are many that are working on that and doing that well. I would say that there's also an interesting aspect of what's happening where generationally you have people that some of the early entrepreneurs in Trinidad or big businesses, smaller businesses, medium businesses, and people are trying to figure out, you know, what do they want to do with this business? What's the plan around this business? And we are seeing quite a bit of acquisition and divesting happening, where people are kind of making a decision, okay, well, you know, I'm this age, do I really want to be in this business? You know, maybe this is an opportunity for me to move on. So persons that may have been thinking about that from the whole entrepreneur side are kind of now acting on that. So we're seeing quite a bit of that. And then you're also seeing other companies looking at opportunities to buy, to be able to divest their businesses, because people are now looking at, you know, making sure that they have multiple sources of income and other things to do. They're divesting to kind of protect their base as well. So there's quite a bit happening in terms of the activity, you know, from an M&A perspective within our clients and within the region, quite honestly. You know, and people are also, it's a regional conversation, quite frankly, looking also for other businesses, sources of hard currency, foreign exchange. You know, there are a number of things happening as people consider their businesses.
So it's interesting that, you know, what you're touching on there, a lot of it is business resilience. So we're talking about mental resilience from the human side, but a lot of that speaks to business resilience and being able
Absolutely.
to of this experience in a better position.
I mean, it's coming out. People do want to protect it, but everyone is thinking about their employee base and all of that. And every time you have to make a decision that affects somebody's income, that affects their ability to provide for themselves and their family, it is absolutely heart-wrenching. Nobody makes those decisions lightly. And, you know, there are many businesses and industries that have had to traverse that over the last year. And you're trying to think through and do everything that you can not to have to make that decision.
Mm.
Have we lost Shian?
We seem to have lost our moderator.
So maybe I can pitch in with a question here. So during this very difficult crisis time, how do you motivate yourself to daily? What tools do you use? Who you want to ask that to, Lisa?
Lisa, I'm going to... Oh, okay,
Sorry?
Gretchen, you go. Self-motivation.
Self-motivation. Well, for me, Lisa, it's about, always having a plan. I think Andrea spoke to this, having a to-do list, but also having a not to-do list, right? What are the things that are outside of your control that you can't make a change. You can't change that from happening. Make sure you don't, stress yourself or overwhelm yourself with that, but focus on what's at hand and really about being very positive. For me, I would say, there are two things I do to help me motivate myself. One is positive self-talk, and that's about constantly talking to myself. When you're under stress, your brain sort of automatically goes to the negative, right? And that's natural to do, but it's about recognizing when that happens and then taking control of that and spinning it back into a positive mindset. So I would say positive self-talk for me would be the first thing. And the second thing would be, for me, an attitude of gratitude. So always being grateful for everything that you have and anything. And we've seen that, to me, more so over the last year, where you can really sit down and count your blessings. You're healthy, your family's healthy. We're still here. We're here to support our employees, here to support our clients. And to me, you have to be so grateful every day, for every little thing that you have. So I would say those are my two things that I do to help motivate myself.
Yeah, I think gratitude is really a big part of that. Andrea, you wanted to add to what Gretchen was saying.
Yes, I want to step up from Gretchen. Gretchen, and that staying focused on the positive is really a key strategy that I'm using in this season. So I'm always in solution mode. I'm not taking on the stress of what the issue is. What is the solution here? What are we going after? So I stay in solution mode. That's one. But in the context of personal self-care, I have added a morning walk to my routine. I find that in this season, nature is really key for me. I need to be out in it. I need to breathe the oxygen. I need to see the squirrel run and the birds chirp. And I have added a morning walk and a really good morning breakfast to my core rotation. So my day rotates around this. And to me, that has made wonders for my stress levels staying at the right level.
And Andrea, you have the perfect setting for those beautiful morning walks.
Yes.
Very nice, where you live. Very nice. Love that. Love that.
All right, so I see that we continue the conversation. Thank you very much. We had a dip in power, so here we go. That does not happen again. So in terms of getting us back into the discussion a little bit, I wanted us to talk about information, because we talked about digitization. We're talking about organizations looking to be basically more accessible and more relevant in that area. But with that comes this barrage of information, both factual and alternate facts. And so I kind of wanted to talk to Andrea a little bit about this information and the impact it's having, because you spoke about your first panel or your first leg of discussion with your staff was around the fact related to COVID. And so I would like to find out a little bit from you what you think about the barrage of information that we're getting and the impact it's having.
And that's why I am intent on really staying positive and staying factual. And when you get in your WhatsApp chats and in all the various places, all of this stuff that keeps bombarding you, sometimes I will push back and say, is this factual? Have you checked this? Just to stop the spiral of these copying WhatsApps and sending it out to everyone. So key to me is stay on facts and do the research, get the research, stay on facts. And when you get a piece of communication that is really good and factual, make sure that that is what you're sharing to your friends and your colleagues. If we look at the conversations we've had around the vaccines, what is a good vaccine? What is not good for you? What is that? And the research that you've had to do to understand the nature and the makeup of all the different types of vaccines so that you understand it. and being able to tap into the experts, the real experts, not the people who put the fake things out on the media. Tap into the experts to understand the nature of the vaccines, hear their point of view on what is good for you and what isn't, so that you're making an educated judgment with every action that you're making. So, and that I think is key to this new matrix. I say we've moved into the matrix. We are living in a matrix now. That I think is key. And that's an individual responsibility for accepting and going after truth and determining what is truth and fact and what am I allowing into my internal mental processing that is allowing me to support the decisions that I'm making. And that's an individual responsibility. And if we continue to spiral this barrage of information out to everybody just because you want to be the first to show this thing that came in and so on, you are contributing to this fake news world that we have entered into. And we are in a matrix, and you better have God the bandwidths of the things that are coming into you. So that's my piece.
You know, that's very true. And information right now in this, I mean, one of the successes, I think, of this whole experience has been the ease with which people receive information. But that's a double-edged sword.
Mm-hmm.
You receive information and it can create anxiety because now you almost have too much information. And so, you know, one of the things I've seen in this whole experience is the levels of anxiety that people who will say to you, I've never been an anxious person, but yet in this experience, I feel anxious all the time. And a lot of it is because we're not filtering anymore. We're literally just being, you know, we're absorbing all of the information that keeps coming to us, both factual and non-factual. And so you're right in terms of making conscious decisions of where you get your information, the type of information, and also switching off a little bit because, you know, you can sit down and talk about, look at, get messages about COVID all day, all night, 24 hours a day, you know. I mean, even now, shows, movies, whatever that you look at in terms of relaxation are also bringing in the COVID theme. So it's almost like there is just no escape. You're constantly in this space. So it really is important for us to guard that, guard our space in terms of the amount of information that comes at us. I wanted to take us, Gretchen, in terms of the financial services sector. Any clear, you know, opportunities that you're seeing coming out for businesses, coming out of this experience, and for individuals for that matter, that you could share with us a little bit?
Well, I would say, Shian, for specifically in terms of RBC and banking, financial industries on the whole, Priya would have alluded to this, the whole, I guess, move or push or thrust towards making sure that our clients, personal and business clients, are, you know, are able to do business easier. And so the whole digital transformation, which we've been on a journey for over 7 years, but we found that, you know, clients would have pre-COVID resisted to moving to online or using alternate channels or just doing their banking differently. And now what you're seeing is people actually calling and saying, oh gosh, could you please sign me up? Or I need to get night bags, or I need to have this. I don't want to go into a branch. How could we do it? And so for us, it's about, you know, I would say one of the successes is definitely in terms of the digital transformation, but it's also helping clients understand that they can do their banking or business so much easier. You know, you don't need to come into a branch. You can, you know, do it online. And even how we connect with clients as well, Shian, I would say, is one of the successes coming out. So similar to what we're doing here in terms of these advice events, we actually started virtual advice events like this for clients in about like April, May of last year. And they're really good because it's educational sessions similar to this one on any topic. So it could be how is real estate being impacted by COVID? You know, let's help you do your online banking. Let's talk about, you know, what, you know, mergers and acquisitions, as Priya alluded to earlier. So we can actually connect with our clients without them having to come into a branch or us going to meet them face to face. We can connect like this and still be able to maintain that, you know what I mean, bond or loyalty, or help clients, because a lot of clients need help at this time, right? So just to figure things out, help with their business, be, you know, us as advisors to be able to advise them in terms of solutions to help themselves personally, both on a personal basis and on a, you know, business basis. So I would say those are the main successes coming out of COVID.
Okay. And Shreya, just to add to what Gretchen is saying, I mean, like, we've been doing this with the banks a lot, including RBC, where, you know, we act as what we call an independent business reviewer. So you have a particular business, you're trying to figure out a few things in terms of how to deal with it. The bank wants you to figure it out as well. And you know, we can come in, we're not acting for the bank, we're not acting for you. We're having this view of the business to help people reach those decisions. And it makes it easier because there's better acceptance, you know, kind of when we get there between the client and the bank. You know,
no one has
so
you don't have an agenda.
Supported in terms of the next steps.
Yeah. So EY is like our partner to help the client at the end of the day come up with the right solution. It could be, you know, is it that I need to expand? Is it I need to contract my business, sell off, do things differently? So we partner, yes, we partner with EY to help our clients as well, particularly businesses.
Priya, we're talking there about, you know, business agility or changing in terms of the business focus. But also we're hearing a lot about individuals and you know, hearing about, you know, retooling and re-engineering and pivoting and all of these words that are kind of going around. Can you share in terms of any opportunities you see on the individual level?
Well, I think, Shian, that mindset around retooling was a conversation that began pre-COVID. I just think that how the world is changing, you know, it's you can't be a one-trick pony. Let me put it like that. I mean, I think that if you're looking at it and you're looking at how the world is evolving and changing, you've got to, you know, be willing to retool and adjust and build your skill set for yourself to be agile, to be able to respond. So even if we had, like, to use an example of somebody that, you know, they specialized in due diligences, you can't just, you can't go through life just doing due diligences. You have to have valuation expertise. You have to understand, you know, certain other things. You know, I mean, in the audit world, you're moving from, so like when we look at our hiring and our profile, that's also changing a lot, right? So auditing, and as we deal with a transition in audit to a more digital type audit. I mean, so when I started, okay, I'm going to age myself, but you know, we didn't even have computers individually. We didn't have laptops, right? So it was these, and Andrea Taylor Hanna will remember this, I'm sure.
Don't call me in your...
Yes, Andrea Taylor Hanna, I know you do. Don't try. Right?
We're going to talk about hard drive.
I'm just saying, you know, we're going to have these long sheets of paper into the yellow folders, and, you know, that then transitioned, and then you got a computer, and then you had a combination of some stuff on your computer and in this hard file, and now everything is in your computer. And then, you know, auditing has moved from, you know, just, you're not picking a sample anymore. We're now taking the whole population and able with our tools to interrogate the population and audit by exception. So according to one of my partners, we're bringing sexy back in auditing, right? Because auditing used to be this whole kind of thing. So, you know, we're bringing sexy back. So it's a little more fun and it's a little more, it's engaging, but the skill set and there's the underlying education systems, you know, in terms of how are our education systems adjusting their curriculum to bring the different skill sets that are needed now in terms of, so what constitutes an accounting degree when I did accounting is going to be, it should be different from what constitutes an accounting degree today. So there are many aspects of what has to happen and what has to change to bring that agility, but it has to be a stealth start, you know, like, I mean, people have to want to do it. You got to recognize that in today's world, this is just what you got to do.
I want to
Agreed.
jump off from there, Priya, because what COVID has done is fast forward a number of changes that were in the works that you were hesitant to move. Now, we have always described the UWI as a city because we have 18,000 students and we have 4,000 staff and you have all of these rules and policies. So everything in my principal saying it's an integrated sweater and you have to be careful of pulling a strand, because if you pull a strand, you may disrupt the whole thing. So that you're always very cautious, and you is very cautious with anything that they do and deep reviews and so on. COVID has pushed all of that aside. And COVID has allowed you to, I need to move from this point to this point. I need to get there quickly because I need to deliver online education to everybody. And the transition that the institution was able to make, all the infrastructure was there, everything was there, but the will to step in just switched on. And in a week, you have all of the faculties able to say, we are ready to deliver online education and we're going to continue this. And it's amazing that it's like the COVID is a light that is forcing you to focus. And the
So it's
same
moved
way
from being these kind of buzzwords, right? Like buzzwords and this thing that was in your strategic plan.
to a thing
So-
that you have to do to survive.
Correct.
And the transition in operating the bursarial function. I mean, I manage the bursarial function at UE, and you know that you can't miss payday. If the pay time is off by 1 minute, the whole place will erupt, and therefore you have to put the things in place that allows that, and the speed and ease with which you're able to do it. The same thing that you were trying to do all the time, but COVID has shone a light, and therefore you're making the right decisions quickly, and everybody's getting on board to effect something. One other thing that I have seen that I want to register in this season is, you see, Priya was hinting that I'm an old person. I started off with
Is that what she was doing? I didn't think that was what she was doing at all.
right? I can speak to floppy disks and all those things in the beginning of my world. But I'm recognizing clearly that young people's minds are a very different mind. And this COVID season has allowed all of the beautiful things that are in a young person's mind to come up for conversation and say, yes, that's the solution, and to move quickly to that solution. So it's speaking to not just their ability to function in their practicality, but I think out of this, the institution is also going to be looking at, what are we teaching them? Because we are the degree granters. How do we need to switch? What is the focus of the content of what we are teaching you for a world that is so very different? And that is a real conversation that the institution is having with itself to evolve, because young people's minds and how they integrate and how things are pulled together for them is very different from the very linear, deliberate kind of mind that ours were trained to be. So I'm seeing, I have great hope, actually.
You know, thank you, Priya and Andrea, because you've just kind of segued into mental resilience. Because in speaking about what's needed coming out of this, it's really your choice to survive and then stepping that up to your choice to thrive. And in essence, that's what mental resilience is. It is looking at, I'm choosing in this difficulty that I'm going to make it through. And in making it through, I am also choosing that I want to be better at the end of this journey. And what are some of the things that I need to do that? So, you know, the American Psychological Association speaks to psychological resilience as walking through the trauma and the event, learning while in there, kind of assimilating some of that learning and coming out better at the end, in essence. It's not avoidance. And so sometimes, you know, we look at this experience and think, oh gosh, if only I didn't have to go through it. but you only really learn resilience through experiencing it. And so, you know, a lot of times we sit down and look at this generation and think, oh God, what are they going to look like? What is this going to be like? What is the world going to be like at the end of this? You know, as you say, the young people. And I actually think that we are going to have potentially some very strong, resilient minds who have actually had this experience. And therefore, they don't have to fear what happens if the world stops in a particular moment, because in essence, they've experienced it. The world has stopped. And we are now coming out of that in a different way. You know, one of the things about resilience as well is understanding the cycle of grief, because cycle and getting to the point of acceptance and moving forward in this new normal speaks to resilience as well. I want to ask, because of course, you know, we could stay and we could talk for the whole morning, but I need to keep us on track. So I want to ask if there are any thoughts that we want to kind of summarize before we open the floor to some questions, because I think there are some. Anything anyone wants to add, say?
I would say, Shian, for me, just to end, you're absolutely right. For me, resilience is my ability to recover, right? To recover from a setback, whatever that setback may be. It may be this small, it may be this big. And the three things that I do are, you know, and I would like to leave with the team would be face the facts of what exactly is the situation, allow time in that situation for recovery, and then bounce back with an attitude of growth and positivity. Those are the three key messages I'd like to leave with the team.
Excellent, for sure.
Yeah, I'd just like to add a bit onto Gretchen's views. One of the things that I like to remind or to share is that the world has witnessed numerous emergency situations, whether it's war, refugee displacement, and in our own region, flooding and natural disasters. And the foundational elements that normally provide for the rebuilding or reviewing and strengthening, and I don't mean infrastructure, but the systems and procedures are generally considered part of the philosophy to be more resilient. So while that is contextualized and it happens in different geographic areas, we have our experiences in looking at systems through when events happen to find means and opportunities to strengthen those systems. And it is no different in this occasion. It is that the entire world has been affected, and we are all victims of this in one form or the other. The other thing I would like to add is that people expect leaders to be strong and infallible. And we're speaking about the issue of mental resilience, and that is an issue that we can't ignore. Leaders also need to be able to identify when they require assistance as well. And there's this view that if they ask for this assistance, they will be seen as weak and so on. So that's a factor that has to be considered in the context of the CEOs. And the last thing I'd like to add as well, because we're having a CEO type discussion, I felt it might also be prudent to get a perspective from a practitioner's perspective, meaning the people who are in fact providing services to people who need support for clinical support, non-clinical support. What exactly are they seeing in the public domain from a societal point of view? Because those are the people who are your customers, they're your clients, they are the family members of your workers and so on. And I think that also helps from a CEO perspective to understand what's happening across our society.
Sure. I mean, one of the things, Daryl, I'll tell you from my experience in cross-organization and individual is, like I said, you touched on it, the ability to be human. Because not only from a leader perspective, but generally we're in this space where everyone thinks that they are supposed to be on point, delivering, doing, perfect, put together, etc. And really the ability to have a moment, as Gretchen said earlier, where I'm not okay. I am working through something. I'm going to come out at the other end, but I'm not okay. And I think that is something in the public space that is important in terms of mental resilience and mental health, is your ability to accept that something is in fact happening, because we tend as a society to mask a lot, you know, and that in itself impacts your ability to actually deal with the situation, because you actually have to come to a place of accepting. But definitely, I think it's important to get that feedback. Anyone?
Shian, I mean, both Daryl, Gretchen, yourself said it. That's what I was going to end with. And so many times you have these challenges, and just simply talking it through, you know, with your business partners, with at home, with a friend, or, you know, it just not only does it, for me, maybe release the tension that I'm holding around it, but the solution just arises, or, you know, the next steps of a path towards a solution just arises. So I value the ability to have those discussions, to have people surrounding me that I can have those discussions with, from the simplest issue to the more complicated issue. Talk about it. It does not make you weaker. It does not make you less than. That's what leadership is. It involves collaboration, trying to get to the right answers.
Okay.
And key to that is allowing the vulnerability in yourself to be exposed.
Agreed.
Allowing the
All right.
vulnerability.
So let me move us over to Lisa. Are there any questions from the audience that we could answer in the next maybe 5 minutes?
Yes, we have a few questions, and I would like to ask a few of them. So I'm asking briefly, but well answered. So can you speak to the varied employees' responses to increased dependence on being in line, to being online, the new technologies they have to learn, speed at which they have
Getting the
to
question.
being at
Yes,
home and
Lisa's
working
breaking
with all
up.
of the technology?
Yeah, Lisa, I'm not getting the question because you broke up right in the middle. You want to try again?
Oh, sure, by all means. Can you speak to the varied responses of employees now that they have to work remotely and deal with all the various technologies, the increase in emails, the things they have to learn about technology?
Okay.
Would anyone like to take that? I mean, I can take it from, go ahead.
Sure, I'll try, Shannon. So for us, we had to invest in some ICT hardware. So we had to get new laptops, headsets. We had to learn to use MS Teams. We weren't doing that before. We had to get accustomed to how to use that, train the staff to send out meeting invites. That was a process. They're very efficient at it now. We still have people who, of course, they because of the monitoring and evaluation, which needs to be strengthened, we don't get a full sense of what is happening at home because we might get work, but not as frequent as we should. And there's a view that we have in the public service that some officers, if they're home, they feel that they're on a holiday, and they're not. They should be working from home once they have the ability to work from home. So we have to constantly reinforce the view that you're working remotely, and the days that you're not in the office is because you are in fact working from home, adding to the productivity bucket of what has to occur for your various ministries and departments. So the PSs across the ministries and departments have a very hands-on approach with the directors to monitor and get staff involved. We do have entities in the public service who could work fully away from home, entire units that don't need to be in the office whatsoever. And then we have varying levels of units that have to come in because of the nature of the work. The records are not digitized. They have to come in and check the hard file and get information and so on. So we do have that challenge, but to move to the remote and online area required some investment, and it will require further investment and people to understand to use those technologies. And I think people have gotten very accustomed to it. I don't think it certainly is not going to go away anytime soon. People like the idea of having to work remotely. We have seen some units that there's actually no loss in productivity, but an increase in productivity. And because they've gotten so accustomed to the routine and they're spending less time on the road. And of course, this also requires a high level of personal independence and personal responsibility. You don't have a supervisor in the corner looking across to see what's happening. So you also need to engender that level of the person's understanding the purpose of what they're doing, and that is to serve the public and to be able to take their roles and responsibilities very seriously and see how their individual roles and responsibilities connect to the large picture. And that is public service delivery for all our stakeholders. So there was some learning. We have seen some improvements, but we recognize we still have a long way to go to get the entire service to have the type of mindset that we need to understand that service delivery is key priority for all our stakeholders.
You know, Daryl, it's interesting that you just said that, because something else that I've noticed in terms of having, you know, individuals and organizations come to me in terms of support is challenges with balance. Because working from home has created an alternate challenge as well, where people don't actually stop. So you're seeing people scheduling meetings far beyond what their typical work day may have been, because now it's like, well, I'm at home, I can do that. And, you know, it's also making that conscious decision that at some point my day ends and I need to have other things going on, my family time, etc., like Gretchen may have spoken about. And so I have seen some employees really suffering from a level of burnout because they're just constantly in one meeting to another, because again, you don't have any downtime. You know, you literally are jumping one meeting to the next meeting, to the next activity, etc. At least at work, you may have had a few minutes to get between point A and point B. In this situation, you're just literally going along your day. So I think from an employee standpoint, you've also had some stress and some lack of balance. I think people are now kind of getting into a normal pace. I see in Priya and Gretchen both not.
No, absolutely.
I also think that
absolutely.
the issue with kids being at home is a stressful factor as well, because
Yeah,
that
homeschool.
it doesn't provide us with a true reflection of, you know, how comfortable people can really be for those who are so circumstanced to be working from home, because they have that additional priority and responsibility that they must pay attention to. So that's another factor as well.
For sure.
Everything
And
will come down to
Shian,
balance.
yeah,
Sorry,
and
go
Shian,
ahead, Gretchen.
yeah, that's the feedback we get, right? That staff, employees are feeling that they can't, it's very difficult for them to manage the work-life balance. And I believe for us as leaders, we need to make sure that we are flexible and that we are empathetic, because we have to understand each person's situation. If someone is has kids at home online, they may not be available at 10 o'clock or at whatever time. And so you have to, as a leader, be able to show that empathy and be very, very flexible in these times. It's very
one of the things that I really think that COVID, to me, could be a success is now you actually are measuring deliverables versus being present.
nice. Yes.
It's really, to me, that could be a real success, because that's something I've battled with many clients about, that someone being at work between 8 to 4 doesn't measure productivity. It's really what they're doing. And so now you're recognizing that organizations are saying, I get it. As long as I get this by X time, whether you work on at 10 o'clock in the morning, at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I just need it by this deadline. It really changes our thinking in terms of being performance focused rather than present focused. And I think that's important. Can I ask Lisa, are there any other questions?
We just have time for one more. Before we have to close. The last question deals with yourself. If you could speak about your pre-COVID pandemic self, what would you say, and how would you prepare for what
if you could speak to your pre-COVID
self and who you are right now, if you can speak to the difference?
Well, if I could speak to my pre-COVID self, I would probably say to not spend so much time hoping that it goes away. Because I do think that initially there was a lot of time spent on hoping that this was going to be a short situation, go back to normal. And so to me, that's something I would say, you know what, recognize, accept it, and start to move your cycle forward from that point. I don't know if anyone else has any other thoughts in terms of what you would say to your pre-COVID self.
Live in the present.
Yeah.
Live in the present, you know, be present each day. That's what you have some control over, you know.
Sure.
Don't forget regrets. And yeah, I know we have to adjust kind of how we plan. It doesn't mean we can't have dreams and ambitions kind of thing, but be present and be grateful for each day.
Right.
I would say monitor your internal stress responses to things. Because what I have gotten out of COVID is this really beautiful sense of calm and clarity and deliberateness in what you're choosing to do or what you're not choosing to do. And I am grateful for the experience that COVID has given me to get to this point. And if I could have lived out of there more before, might have been even better. So tying it to living in the present and managing deliberately your own stress responses, how many things you're taking on at the same time, thinking that you could do all 50 things, when really and truly you could only deliver on the 2, you know?
Right.
Yeah, I would say for me, I would say knowing when to cut off and stop. Because pre-COVID, I would be at work, functions, whatever, be home 7, 8 p.m. at night, now getting home to the kids, now trying to do homework, they're tired. But I would say with COVID, that has definitely, it has I had to draw a line and stop. So I would say know your limitations, draw that line and stop. Because you could go on, right? You could be on that laptop or that phone and just go through emails. Oh my God, an hour passed, you don't even realize. But have a cutoff time, stop so that you have your family time, your work time. So keep setting those boundaries, even though you are at home versus, being out and at home. Yeah.
Agreed.
And I would just add, I mean, you have to prioritize your priorities. And CEOs don't work alone. They have a team that supports them. So I think getting a better understanding of which are your support staff has parents at home with comorbidities and who have issues that you had no idea they had. So you have to pay particular attention to how you treat with their level of exposure and how they could work from home and so on. So getting a deeper understanding of those issues with the people who are very close to you and support you was something that I did not have full sight of prior to the visit.
Yeah.
All right.
I want to thank you, members, for such a useful and informative conversation. This is certainly quite fruitful for us to learn about your experiences. And from the Business Development Unit and Faculty of Social Sciences, the University of the West Indies, I want to sincerely thank all attendees, Shian, moderator, and our speakers for engaging us today in this useful conversation. I also want to encourage members and attendees to please, if you desire to continue this conversation, please join us on June the 9th at our seminar that is being hosted by the Business Development Unit. We will be contacting you later on during the week with more information on this seminar. Thank you so much, and may you be safe and may God bless. That's
Thank
Thank you. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you, Shian. Thank you, you for inviting me. This was great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you indeed.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Have a great day.